Photoshop CS6 offers some new blur options for us to use. You'll find them in the Filter menu, Blur, and then Field Blur, Iris Blur, Tilt Shift. No matter which one of these three you choose, you're thrown into a new blur workspace where you can control the level of the blur either with this slider or with this HUD. And the Field Blur seems to me like kind of a Gaussian blur that you might come back in, throw a mask on, and then selectively clean up and reveal places. I'm going to take this blur all the way down so that it doesn't affect our next choice, the iris blur. And by default, you're given the fall off point and these where the blur begins and where it ends. You can pull these out to change the shape or size of your iris blur. Again, you change the fall off, how far you want it to go, and then the intensity of the blur itself. You can move these points independent of one another by holding down the Alt key or Option key, or excuse me, Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac, so that you can work however creatively you want. And surprisingly, you can throw more areas of focus into your image. So this has some real creative possibilities. I'm going to take this blur all the way off as well and jump to Tilt Shift, which traditionally is a picture taken from up above looking down on buildings of some sort, and then you use Tilt Shift to make everything look like toys. But I wondered, how might this be used as a creative tool for illustrations, for other purposes? How might we use it? You can move these independent of one another, just as in the iris blur. You can rotate these to change the direction of your blur, and again, of course, you can change the amount of blur. There's also distortion and bokeh, and you can play with these to see what different effects you might get. But this seems to offer some creative potential and kind of exciting. Once you commit to this, Photoshop's going to think for a second and then apply that blur, and everything is working at surprisingly fast speeds. This is a pretty large photo. So thank you, Photoshop team, for these new blur tools, new creative tools for our arsenal.